Hello, guys. Welcome to a new edition of React Today as part of the World's Wide Project. What are we going to talk about today? So many things that have happened in the last 7 days, the last week. Everything is going and moving too fast, absolutely, but nothing has changed. Apparently, what is the main idea of the United States of America with Joe Biden and his friends and administration and the communication systems that they handle the mainstream media is nothing but to escalate the war. And yeah, we have seen that they already give permission to Volodymyr Zelensky to attack Russia with missiles, intercontinental missiles, and British missiles, American and British. And you already saw in this program how American soldiers, rangers, etc., are already being killed in Kursk area and other fronts in this war. And not only that, of course, Canadian and British are assisting Ukraine, but they are operating systems that can only be managed by foreign countries. I mean, non-Ukrainians, because that will be to give Ukrainians information that the armies don't want to give Ukraine. And that means the technologies and the technicians that are preparing, coordinating with satellite information and to geoposition their enemy. So that has to be done in secret, and it's only technicians that are certified by the European Union, not Ukraine, are capable to do so. And that's why Vladimir Putin said, okay, guys, you're enlarging this, you haven't stopped, stop escalating. The United States of America, as always, has never paid attention to anything that Russia says after the Second World War, and especially after the dissolution of the USSR and the Warsaw Pact. So how Putin is patient is something that many of us ask. He's a good strategist. America is full of idiots and out of control minds that only look for war and war only because they want to protect their interests so much, and they're so greedy and stupid enough out of reality that they're going to bring the war home. I have said this for the last 5 years to you guys. You should remember when I said it because they're saying it now. Colonel, I forgot his name, he was interviewed yesterday. Douglas McGregor is saying exactly that they're going to bring the war home. How come I see it? And I'm not a colonel and a strategist like he is. He was in the Battle of the Gulf and with Ken O'Keefe. I hope you well. I hope you're doing all right, Ken. But yeah, he's saying that they're going to bring the war home because once this conflict starts, it's going to be very difficult to stop it. If Russia attacks any of the countries of NATO, they're all going to start attacking Russia, and Russia has already said that, all right, if that's the way you want it, that's the way you're going to get it. And we know that Russia don't fucks around. If Russia says it's going to do this, it's going to do it. And it's very patient after the Nord Stream 2 issue. Why I said that? Because one thing that we need to understand is that as long as we are in the hands of plutocrats like these, perverse and manipulative, and that are in cahoots with the people that control the media, the mainstream media, etc., and there are very few companies because there's 4 or 5 companies that control all media in the United States and Europe, and very probable around the world and the Western world. And as always, as we have explained in this program before, the Psy-War consists also in use mainstream media in order to program you to believe what America wants to say. And one of those issues was Vietnam. The other issue was the other wars that started in 2001, an inside job, as we talked with George Galloway before. I had to explain to him that that couldn't have happened. And now apparently he understood that I was right because he's kind of apologizing and saying that he has come to new conclusions after 23 years, George. But yeah, okay. I'm glad that I told you that I was right 3 years ago when I told you that it was an inside job. All right, so right now, Benjamin Netanyahu is proclaiming that this is 9/11 for a year ago, since October the 7th last year. It's because it's the continuation of the plan of the United States in 2001, and now the continuation of their 9/11 has been repeated over and over by Mr. Netanyahu. I don't think it's going to last. And the other issue that he was saying, Colonel Douglas MacGregor, was that he might be killed. And who said that first? I think I did. Why? Because the interests of the strong are getting tired of the manipulation of this mister that has more than 30 years looking for his wet dream, which is the greater Israel. But even more than 30 years ago, because for more than 30 years he has swear to God that in the next month or two, Iran will have weapons of mass destruction. We're already familiar with that lie. So as long as the Americans and Europeans are possessed by these kind of people, that the lobbyists, which are the corporations that go to every Congress in the United States and are capable to buy their interests. That is, I will protect you, I will put $5 million for your campaign, for your next senator campaign. Don't worry, if you support us, we will support you. And that state of circumstances has corrupted the United States to the core. And the same with Europe, to the point that they don't care for the people any longer, and the representatives, the politicians, are looking, the citizen itself is looking to become a politician in order to become part of the elites, because the problem with the elites is to not be part of the elites. And as long as I cannot be part of the elite, that is the problem. Once I get to the elites, oh my God, yes, like it happened in the 30-year war between the British Army and the IRA. They were betrayed in the end, yes, by some of these fellas that became politicians, and once in power became the power against the real soldiers that battled and died and suffered the consequences of war. In those days, I will say 1999. But of course, this is an 800 years occupation, according to the Irish people. And if we keep seeing the world in terms of colonization, which is what the Americans and European leaders are for, which is the same heart and mind of Israel, and the United States of Israel, nothing is going to change but for wars. Every time we go for a war in the First and the Second and now the Third World War, nothing ever changes, but it gets worse every time. And the only people that benefit from these wars, are not the soldiers that died there and their families, another lost generation. This is the third or the fourth lost generation they're witnessing. And what they're doing to Palestine is killing the whole nation out of existence. And that is unacceptable in the 21st century. Poverty is unacceptable in the 21st century. That's why we need to know. Why is it that the American policy don't understand or is for the people? I'm going to explain you why. And as long as we have this problem, and as long as we have no generals, no commanders, no admirals, no Air Force to say, I cannot do this any longer to the American people, in order to kill other people, to receive crumbs from this industry, to betray the American Constitution like we're doing with the comment that 19 senators went in order to say, hey, no more wars, no more weapons. We are betraying our law. It's against the Constitution. It's against international law. We all know that, but the United States or Israel, they don't give a damn. They don't. So only 19 out of more than 500. Why is that? Let's take a look to this.
So you're an American defense contractor in the late 1980s. You've been making good money for years selling weapons and equipment to the US military. World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and of course the Cold War were all very good for business. But lately, things have been quiet. The Cold War had already peaked, which left you without any big orders for all your fancy bombs and planes. So somehow you needed to find a way to boost your profits. But then something magical happens out of the blue. The Pentagon and Congress wanted to make producing defense equipment easier, so they did something unexpected. They called for the defense industry to merge, to go from hundreds of small contractors to just a few industry giants. See, typically, the government wants to break up monopolies. Standard Oil, American Tobacco, and even AT&T's monopolies have been hunted down and destroyed. But here was the same government demanding that you monopolize possibly the worst industry to have a monopoly in.
They were convinced that they could rely on the companies to do what was in the best interests of the warfighters and the taxpayers.
Well, joke's on them. Because with the government's full support, you created a monopoly so big, so strong, that the US government and subsequently the US citizen would have no other choice but to just bend over and take it, to the tune of billions of dollars per year. Today, the military-industrial complex is arguably more powerful than America itself, and it all spiraled out of control after this one single decision. Stay dangerous, and this is the monopolization of America's military-industrial complex. And by the way guys, a lot of you guys are probably sitting down right now as you're watching this. But did you know that sitting down is actually one of the worst things in the world? Aside from the risk of looking like this when you're older, sitting down too much according to Yale Medicine can lead to cancer, weight gain, heart disease, vascular problems, and of course lower back pain and spine issues. And it makes sense, humans were just not meant to be sitting down this much. And that is why I recommend you get a standing desk. I've been using standing desks for 6 years now, and aside from cutting out artificial food, getting a standing desk is one of the best hacks out there for improving your health. And the brand I recommend is FlexiSpot. FlexiSpot was voted the best standing desk by TechRadar, and they're recommended by YouTubers like Linus Tech Tips. What I love about FlexiSpot is that compared to other brands that I've tried, their touchpad is super responsive and fast, the desktop comes with pre-drilled holes so you don't need a drill, they have a ton of different colors, sizes, and accessories to choose from, and the actual motors are strong enough to do this. So do your body a favor and pick up your own standing desk by scrolling down and clicking the link below. Scroll down and click the link below to get your own standing desk now. Thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. By the 1990s, there was so little demand for new weapons and so much new competition that it left you as a defense contractor super desperate, and you were willing to do anything to land a contract. That is the problem with world peace. Gone were the days of making easy money from war. For the past 10 years, you were just begging for scraps, hoping you wouldn't go bankrupt. But then in 1993, everything changed. See, over the past decade, it hadn't been just defense contractors that were feeling the heat of budget cuts, but the Pentagon and the DoD were feeling it too. At the time, it could easily take 5 to 6 different companies just to make one little missile, which was obviously a very expensive, time-consuming process that was also a threat to national security. Ding ding ding. So to speed up the production process, save money, and to give the American contractors a better chance at competing with the Europeans, the Pentagon came up with a plan: a merger. Get the 50 biggest defense contractors to sit down at a table and to get them to merge into just a few giant companies. That way, that same missile that took 5 different companies to make before could be produced quickly and easily with just one company. The merger was supposed to make America's biggest defense contractors more competitive and efficient, but you had other plans. See, it didn't take very long for you and your defense buddies to realize that you had been given the opportunity of a lifetime. Here was the government personally giving you permission to do what every other industry could only dream of: create a monopoly. So that's exactly what you did.
51 major contractors consolidated to 5 giants.
51 of the biggest and best American defense companies merged to form just 5 megacorporations: Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, General Dynamics, and Raytheon Technologies. At first, your little monopoly seemed perfectly innocent. You would supply the Pentagon and the US military with weapons and equipment and get a very reasonable 15% profit in return. That was a deal. But you were running a monopoly, remember? And when has a monopoly ever been fair and reasonable? Sure, the Pentagon and the DoD had only agreed to 15% profits, but they have forgotten one little detail. By letting you monopolize, your cartel of 5 companies had all the leverage now. Who was the government to tell you what to charge? So you proceeded to take the US government and military for a ride. A very long, very expensive ride that they would never be able to get off of. In 1991, one shoulder-fired Stinger missile cost $25,000. Adjusting for inflation, that's around $55,000 in 2023. But today, that same missile costs over $400,000. And that did not happen by accidents. Take the Patriot missile system for example. Today, the sole manufacturer of the Patriot missile system is Raytheon, and the only companies that make the actual missiles the Patriot system fires are Lockheed Martin and Boeing. No one else on Earth knows how to build this missile system or the actual missiles it uses. For the US government, that is a problem. But for you, it's a massive opportunity. See, the Patriot missile system is one of America's most important defensive weapons. Without it, we would not be able to track and shoot down enemy planes or missiles that enter American airspace. And you knew that. America needs Patriot missiles to keep the country safe. And since you and your other defense monopoly buddies are the only ones that manufacture them, you can just charge whatever you want for the Patriot missile system, and the American taxpayers would just have to cough up the cash. So instead of taking a reasonable 15% profit on each Patriot missile you built, you decide to push your profit margin to almost 40%. That means for each $4 million Patriot missile you produce, you're taking home almost $1.6 million in pure profits for just one missile. But 40% is just the beginning. It's still child's play.
This, Bill, is an oil pressure switch that NASA used to buy. Well, their oil switch with all of the cabling costs $328. This oil switch, we paid over $10,000 for it.
In 2012, he was tapped to take the reins of the troubled F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program. It was 7 years behind schedule and $90 billion over the original estimate. But Bogdan told us the biggest costs are yet to come for support and maintenance, which could end up costing taxpayers $1.3 trillion.
We won't be able to buy as many F-35s as we thought, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to buy more airplanes when you can't afford the ones you have.
The Pentagon had ceded control of the program to Lockheed Martin. The contractor is delivering the aircraft the Pentagon paid to design and build, but under the contract, Lockheed and its suppliers retain control of design and repair data, the proprietary information needed to fix and upgrade the plane.
So you spend billions and billions of dollars to get this plane built, and it doesn't actually belong to the Department of Defense?
The weapon system belongs to the department, but the data underlying the design of the airplane does not.
We can't maintain and sustain the planes without Lockheed's.
Correct.
So
and that's because we didn't up front either buy or negotiate getting the technical data we needed so that when a part breaks, the DoD can fix it themselves.
The Pentagon had made an expensive mistake, and you were nowhere near done with them. See, as a defense contractor, you don't have the time or tools to build every single little part that goes into every gun, missile, or plane you sell, so you outsource a lot of that work to smaller companies called subcontractors. And these subcontractors also followed in your footsteps. In the 1990s, some of these subcontractors also saw their chance to make a lot of money by merging. And so that's exactly what they did. And one company that did this really well is TransDigm. TransDigm is responsible for manufacturing the parts for military aircraft like the Apache helicopter, F-16 jet, and the CH-47 Chinook. In fact, they're the only company that can produce a lot of the small parts. And as the only subcontract that can produce those parts, this company has made literally billions, massively overcharging the Pentagon for all of them. Instead of the pathetic 50% profit margin the Pentagon sees as acceptable, TransDigm's profit margins actually range from 17 to a whopping 4,451%. Yes, you heard that right, 4,451%.
In 2006, Sheh Assad says Apache helicopters were unable to fly without a crucial valve. TransDigm had taken over the manufacturer and hiked the price of the valve by $747, up almost 40%.
We said, look, we need these parts to go on aircraft that are in Iraq. They simply said, we're not going to ship it until you cough up.
To the battlefield.
That's correct. This was going to the battlefield.
By 2018, the valve would grow to cost almost $12,000. A Pentagon report called it extortion.
So explain to me, why can't the Department of Defense just step up to TransDigm and say, no, we're not going to pay that?
Because we don't have another source for a lot of the spares that they provide right now. They are the literally only game in town in order to make an aircraft fly. So we're at their mercy.
Does that make sense to any of you?
No, it is very concerning to me. Contractors see that they can do this. They are the ones that hold the power.
So it's not really a true capitalistic market because one company is telling you what's going to happen.
So if it's not a capitalistic system, what is it?
It's monopoly.
Last year, TransDigm made a nice $5 billion, while their stock, it's at a healthy nearly $900 a share. So as you can see, it pays the price gouge. But to the big 5 defense contractors like Boeing, you really don't mind that they're price gouging you, because by overcharging you, you get to overcharge the Pentagon even more. Now I can already hear you saying, but Jake, as an American company, shouldn't your first priority be the safety and security of our troops instead of squeezing the government for every penny they have? Yeah, sure. But there is one downside to this. See, obviously, scamming the Pentagon in broad daylight is gonna make you a lot of enemies. So when the public and government officials eventually start sharpening their pitchforks, you gotta take the only logical path. You gotta gather your best and brightest lobbyists and send them to Capitol Hill. Every year, dozens of Pentagon and DoD employees leave the government to join the defense contractors, giving you all the insider information and contacts you need to keep America's defense budget growing and the monopoly thriving. Over the past 20 years, you've spent more than $2.5 billion on the legal bribery that is lobbying, which is a pretty good deal when you consider that just one of the big 5 contractors already make over $67 billion in a single year. Honestly, you could afford to lobby even more if you needed to. With this measly $2.5 billion, you were able to employ an average of 700 lobbyists every single year. That's more than 1 lobbyist for every member of Congress for just a teeny tiny fraction of the amount of money you made. And they know exactly how to appeal to the people in power. Just tell the public that's for national security. No one's gonna question this when it's for the troops in Iraq or Afghanistan, or even the poor helpless civilians in Ukraine. Are you really stressing over a few $1,000s when American men and women are dying in Iraq? Are you gonna let democracy fall in Ukraine over a couple $1 billion? And this argument has worked every single time. It's worked so well that in 2011, the estimated amount of money lost because of waste or overcharging from contracts for Iraq and Afghanistan totaled between $30 and $60 billion. $30 to $60 billion that you were able to grift straight into your pockets. And that was 12 years ago. How much could that number be now? We don't really know. And you want to keep it that way, which brings us to our next step. Step number 4, deny transparency. Ever since the 1990s, annoying government officials have always been nagging you over seeing your receipts. According to the government, any military equipment sold to the Pentagon should have a clear record of what it costs to produce, which could be a bit of a problem considering you don't want to settle for that sad 15% profit they're offering you. Luckily, you have the perfect solution. Label your products for commercial use instead of just military use. See, defense contractors don't only supply the military with products, they also make planes, equipment, and tools for commercial use. And commercial products fall under completely different rules. As a free market country, no one can demand a company publicize what it costs them to make commercial products, or else their competitors could easily use that information to copy their products or beat their prices. You don't ask the car dealer, the grocery store, and pizza parlor for cost data. No, you buy based on your assessment of the best price and fair value. The Pentagon can do the same for commercial source items. Thanks to this rule, you could just classify as many of your products as possible as commercial, and no one would ever be able to ask you what they really cost to produce. So you got a little creative with your product descriptions. Sure, this valve is the only thing that can make those Apache helicopters fly, but it's also a really important component in commercial planes. So you technically can't ask us what it really costs. So that would be $10,000, thank you. And with that last little problem solved, you finally get to sit back and enjoy the fruits of the American taxpayer's labor. Thanks to your monopoly, the money is pouring in and life is better than ever. But like all billionaires, no amount of money is ever good enough for you. You have to take it one step further. You have to find a way to make even more. So you add one last step to your master plan. Instead of using all that taxpayer money the government gives you to improve or update your products, just use it to buy back shares to make yourself even richer.
A Department of Defense study released last month found major contractors flush with tens of billions of Pentagon dollars to hand out to shareholders.
In 2021, the top 5 defense contractors received more than $116 billion in Pentagon contracts. That's $116 of your money in the form of taxes. And how much money did their CEOs take home? Between $18 million and $23 million each. In total, the big 5 top executives were paid more than $250 million. We are literally paying taxes, so these corrupt executives can live lives of total luxury. And the worst part is that there's nothing the government can do about it except spend even more.
In March, the Pentagon announced its largest budget ever, $842 billion. Almost half will go to defense contractors.
See, everyone knows about the war in Ukraine and how profitable that's been for the military-industrial complex. But did you know that there's another secret American war going on right now that is arguably much worse than Ukraine? A secret war that has been going on for nearly 10 years, that's killed over 377,000 people, 60% of which died from starvation, drinking unsafe water, or not being able to get medical care. A war that some call the greatest humanitarian crisis on the planet right now. And yet, while America sits back and calls Putin evil, you never hear a word about this war in the news. You don't hear about any billion-dollar aid packages going to help these poor people. Nothing. Why? Because in this secret war, America is the evil one. And what war is this? The war in Yemen. And why is America involved in this war? Because of one reason and one reason only: to keep the Saudi royal family happy. And we expose all of America's misdeeds in the Yemen war in our new private documentary that is definitely too spicy to be posted publicly. In fact, it's already age restricted, and you can watch it right now by clicking the card on the screen. Click the card on the screen to watch now.
And after you have seen this, you're going to ask me, hey, but Bernie was a good guy. Bernie had 3 chances to be president of the United States. I have this discussion with George Galloway too. And he said that he has his meats well put in. If you get my drift, and I say, no, I don't agree with you, George. I think that Bernie Sanders has the chance to be president of the United States twice. And he's giving the people what the people want to hear, but he's not transforming anything in reality, even though he supported Jeremy Corbyn. And we were supposed to be parallels. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn with Bernie Sanders ended up betraying the American people twice, in 2016 and in 2020. And he could have been president in 2016, have he run as an independent. But he gave it to Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton lost. And okay, so I have many criticisms to Bernie Sanders, even though what he says is what we want to hear. But it was necessary, of course, 1 year later, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians laid killed and assassinated, and in forms and in ways that we have seen, you know. The massacre and the stories behind what's going on in Palestine is unbelievable. I mean, kids dying from starvation in loneliness, kids dying after the rebels come on to him, women, children, fathers, men, you know. And now in Lebanon. And they're going to do that to America and Canada. You be sure that Israel will do it. It won't hesitate to kill any Canadian that opposes them if they have a strong interest with the Americans on Canada. You can bet on that. So,
this morning to discuss the 3 joint resolutions of disapproval, or JRDs, that the Senate will be voting on tomorrow. They are SJ Res 111 to block 120 millimeter tank rounds, SJ Res 113 to block 120 millimeter high explosive mortar rounds, SJ Res 115 to block JDAMs, which are guidance kits attached to many of the bombs dropped in Gaza. The truth of the matter is that from a legal perspective, these resolutions are not complicated. They're cut and dry. The United States government is currently in violation of the law, and every member of the U.S. Senate who believes in the rule of law should vote for these resolutions. The Foreign Assistance Act and the Arms Export Control Act are very clear. The United States cannot provide weaponry to countries that violate internationally recognized human rights or block U.S. humanitarian aid. According to the United Nations, much of the international community and every humanitarian organization on the ground in Gaza, Israel is clearly in violation of these laws. Under these circumstances, it is illegal for the U.S. government to provide them with more offensive weaponry. Joint resolutions of disapproval are Congress's tool to enforce those laws. As I have said many times, Israel clearly had a right to respond to the horrific Hamas terrorist attacks on October 7th, which killed some 1,200 innocent people and took 250 hostages. I don't think anybody in the U.S. Senate disagrees with that. But Prime Minister Netanyahu's extremist government has not simply waged war against Hamas. It has waged all-out war against the Palestinian people. Within Gaza's population of just 2.2 million inhabitants, more than 43,000 have been killed and more than 103,000 injured, 60% of whom are women, children, and elderly people. 2/3 of all structures in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. That includes 87% of the housing. 87% of the housing, 84% of health facilities, and 70% of water and sanitation plants. Every one of Gaza's 12 universities has been bombed, as have hundreds of schools. For 13 months, there has been no electricity in Gaza. And that's what has gone on over the last year. And as horrific as that situation is, what is taking place today, now, as we speak, is even worse. As a result of Israel blocking desperately needed humanitarian aid in recent weeks, the volume of aid getting into Gaza is lower than at any point since the war began. More aid is needed, less aid is getting through. Jeff?
Thank you, Bernie. Guys, I stand before you today as someone who has spent a lifetime advocating for Israel's economic success and for their security in a very difficult part of the world. I was 21 when I went to Israel and hitchhiked throughout the country, stayed at a kibbutz, proceeded to swim in the Dead Sea and the Red Sea and the Med Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and I've been back to Israel a number of times and seen the phenomenal, successful country they have built as a startup nation, as a nation that solved its energy challenges, as a nation that reforested, and have always felt I'd be voting for each effort to assist Israel with security. And I will continue to support defensive weapons for Israel, for David's sling, for a variety of undertakings, and I would gladly support financing of a far more effective barrier that could not be easily penetrated from Gaza into Israel, giving Israel full time to respond to what happened in the horrific day of October 7th. But the Netanyahu government has undertaken policies that are out of sync with American values. And that's why I'm here at this moment. It's President Biden who referred to it as indiscriminate bombing. That bombing has produced massive deaths, massive injuries, massive destruction.
Well, I want to start by thanking Senator Sanders for introducing these joint resolutions of disapproval. I think it's a very important moment for the United States Senate. And what these resolutions stand for is the simple proposition that U.S. taxpayer assistance should not come in the form of a blank check, even to our closest partners. We need assurances that U.S. interests, values, and priorities will be respected by foreign governments that receive American support. That principle should apply universally, including to the Netanyahu government in Israel. But even as the United States has provided billions and billions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer-financed bombs and other offensive weapon systems, we've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu repeatedly violate the terms of American security assistance, disregard U.S. priorities, and ignore our requests. A partnership should be a two-way street. not a one-way blank check. Like all of my colleagues, in the aftermath of the horrible Hamas terrorist attacks of October 7th, I have repeatedly supported Israel's right to defend itself and end Hamas's control of Gaza, and I remain steadfast in that support. There must be no more October 7th. But how you conduct that defense matters. A just war must nevertheless be waged justly. And that's why recipients of U.S. weapons must comply with American laws and policies. Recipients of security assistance must, number one, facilitate and not arbitrarily restrict the delivery of humanitarian assistance into war zones where U.S. weapons are being used. And two, American-supplied weapons must be used in accordance with international humanitarian law. The Netanyahu government is violating both of these requirements in Gaza. I would just turn everyone's attention to first the phone call that President Biden had with Prime Minister Netanyahu on October 9th, where he said the situation in Gaza was already bad and it's getting worse. And as Senator Sanders says, it's getting apocalyptic. That was followed up by a letter from Secretaries Blinken and Austin on October 13th. Their letter was to then Defense Minister Gallant and to Ron Dermer. I would remind people that the Minister of Defense Gallant has since been fired by Netanyahu from the government because he prioritized a return of the hostages and a ceasefire. In fact, I just met with the father of one of the people who's still hostage right now in Gaza, who supports this resolution. In that letter, the secretaries, Secretary Blinken and Austin, referenced U.S. law. They referenced 620I of the Foreign Assistance Act. They referenced NSM 20, the President's National Security Memorandum. And they said this: the humanitarian situation for over 2 million civilians in Gaza is increasingly dire. They also said trucks carrying humanitarian commodities, including perishable goods funded by the United States, are delayed at crossing platforms. We are particularly concerned that recent actions by the Israeli government, including halting commercial imports, denying or impeding nearly 90% of humanitarian movements between northern and southern Gaza in September, and continuing burdensome and excessive dual-use restrictions, among other things they list, are impeding the delivery of absolutely necessary life-saving aid. They then go out in this letter to spell out what needs to happen in order to meet the conditions and standards of U.S. law and policy. I'll just read from the first part. Ahead of winter surge, all forms of assistance throughout Gaza by, number one, enabling a minimum of 350 trucks per day to enter into Gaza. They have a number of other elements, including removing restrictions on the use of container and closed trucks and increasing the number of vetted drivers to 400. They go on to list a number of other criteria. And the reality is, with maybe minimal change, these conditions that Secretary Austin and Secretary Blinken laid out have not been met.
That's why you need to vote for me, FDRC Molano Elections 2025 at gmail.com. You give your information there, vote for me, and we're going to prove that Canada can lead this world in ways that you cannot imagine. The evolving economy will guarantee that Canada will give an example for us, the country and the world, that we can lead the world in ways that we can develop technology. In those days, when I get elected, the World's Way Out project is going to take over because it's a way out of what we have. And as long as we have lobbyists, as you saw in that video, there are military-industrial complex, tobacco, and all these that have been taken under control by other monopolies, the communication system monopolies. I will have public systems because the public systems are efficient, and if they're built with good quality and are under control, with the proper citing and prosecution when necessary, it can be very productive, and that has been proven by Japan, that has been proven by Singapore, that has been proven by other emerging economies that have shown us on the ground that what is national and what is public can be profitable too. And the private corporations don't have the answer for everything. That is a stupid and monstrous lie created by Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and also the Chicago Boys, which is totally anti democratic, because democracy is dead. I've told you that before. 5 or 6 years ago, I showed you the epitaph of democracy in English and Spanish, and why. The problem with democracy is democracy. When corruption takes over and lies and the international system of sanctions is used in order to coerce, and the dollar is used in order to exploit, to coerce, and the sanctions accompany that in order to put people at starvation levels, like they do in Cuba, like they do in Venezuela. So what we're looking at now is the opportunity for Canadians to give a chance to people to take leadership, because what is Justin Trudeau and what is Pierre Poilievre, they're nothing but fighting. If you see this week, last week, their comments, they're fighting on their egos. They're criticizing like the best pals do from one another's side of the aisle, but they're not making or having any solutions for the Canadian people, except protect Israel no matter what, even though Justin Trudeau said that he will abide by international law. Let's see what happens if Netanyahu sits his ass and put his feet in this land. He should be arrested immediately, because this decree, 1 year too little too late, but it came, is a binding resolution. Is a binding resolution against Netanyahu and Gallant, and many others that are going to come, especially one of the leaders of the Hamas that took part on October the 7th. But even though it's a short step for humanity, it's a big leap in justice when it comes to what Israel deserves and the United States deserve. Like I said before, a new Nuremberg trial would be absolutely necessary in this case, because of the magnitude of the genocide, the intentional abuse, the cruelty, the demonic attitude towards hospitals, schools, young children, shot them in the face, shot them in the head, shot them in the stomach, how they burned them alive, how they came to rescue their children and they will kill also. How many children died of inanition, of starvation, alone, sad, abandoned. How many stories are we going to hear? As many as necessary, because the stories that we heard about the Holocaust broke my heart. But now I understand better that in many cases, all the people that hated this, especially the state of Israel, is right, and it was right. Because you cannot let these people take any advantage. Look what they have done. With the help of his friends, with just a little help from their friends, England and the United States, France and Germany, they're annihilating two peoples, the Palestinians and now the Lebanese, and they want their resources too. And they want Canada's resources, and they want the world for themselves, period. And Canada's elites are part of that plan. That's why Francesca, the special rapporteur for the United Nations, Francesca, it spoke that Canada is guilty of crimes against humanity. Of course, Mr. Justin Trudeau, and now you can see Mrs. Chrystia Freeland saying that Mexico is serving as a backdoor to China.
I have heard personally from members of the Biden administration, from people who have been strong supporters of President Trump and who are his advisors, very grave concerns about Mexico serving as a backdoor for China into the North American trading space. I believe those concerns are legitimate, and Canada, as a partner in the NAFTA trading area, shares those concerns.
When I already proved to you guys just on my last program how these journalists got Mr. Stoltenberg, the General Secretary for NATO, And when he was accusing China of being a menace to the European Union and to the world and to America. And the journalist told him, okay, so how many countries have China invaded in the last 40 years? And I know it wasn't Vietnam, but in the last 40 years, Vietnam was way longer than that, 60, let's say. It ended in 75, so, okay, so from 65 to 75. And that was after the French were there. Okay, so how many? None. China has not invaded any country. You can use the Uyghurs. Yeah, the Uyghurs. Genocide against bullshit. Prove it. There's no enough proof that say like genocide committed against African countries by the Portuguese or the French Congo. So let's say, and the Germans and the Netherlands in Africa, they committed genocides and they clean up the place of the black people in their countries because they wanted to create plantations and landlordship and viceroys, etc. In the name of the king and the queen and God and king and God and queen and all that crap that doesn't work in the 21st century. Again, colonization in the 21st century is a no-no. It only demonstrates the decadence and the devolving understanding of things in this planet by the rich. Generation after generation, century after century. But of course, there are some of them that takes the headlines. And those are, of course, the Europeans and the Americans as never before. The United States of Israel with Israel. Because we have to understand that this comes more than 100 years in preparation. The 9/11 of Netanyahu. It's more than 100 years. And it's not only me saying, it's Colonel Douglas MacGregor said it just yesterday when he said that Benjamin Netanyahu might be killed because of the enemies he had made, because of the circumstances he has got involved, because of the divisions that is causing in his own coalition. And not only that, there's many other people, the Syrians, the Iraqis want him down, the same people in Israel want him down and off business. And also other countries that have mutual interest with Israel, like is selling oil to Israel, have good relationships with Israel because of the power of her friends in the Middle East. And that is why Saudi Arabia and now Qatar started to say, okay, I'm not going to be more in the middle of these negotiations. Also because, of course, Qatar has been a big ally of Israel, big time. The same with Saudi Arabia. And now they're aligning with the BRICS, with Iran, because they have asked to become part of the BRICS, like many other countries in Central and South America. This aligning from the dollar, we already are well familiar with that, and that is not a plan that Putin wanted to expand his around the world like the American mainstream media and the governments and the liars we have, like Mr. Anthony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, that general, black general, that goes all around saying that ironclad for Israel, etc. Mr. Lloyd. And we don't see very much future for Canada, especially now that Bill C-11, Bill 18, and now Bill 24 are getting the Constitution out of our hands, because they are promoting the private sector. In other words, this is like Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel was always wanted for 2,000 years, since Bible days. You just read Exodus, Deuteronomy, especially. How take over whatever resources and whatever sources are for wealth. Make sure you get that. Once you get that, you start giving orders you're not submitted to. But if you have control over the resources that produce production and the means of production, let's talk, I don't know, Adam Smith or Karl Marx together about this matter. Well, socialism is exactly that. It's the distribution of wealth. Now you're going to say, now I'm a socialist. In part, I am. If you don't abuse socialism, because if you don't relate socialism with the United Socialist Soviet Republics, you're totally wrong. That happened more than 100 years ago, and we can do better than socialism now that we understand the processes and mechanics of economy way better than before. Even though the fact that there were always going to be rich people, that doesn't mean that the people cannot be also rich. And that's what my administration will guarantee any Canadian, especially after 60, to make sure that every Canadian has a pension plan that is according to his needs, no, and according to his training and according to his last pension, because there's people that live on check by check, and we can do way better. If there's 3 or 4 people, let's say Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Soros, and Bill Gates, that have more money than enough countries, GDP, how can that be possible? In the days of Plato, nobody can win more than 6 times the value or the minimum wage of the lesser of the workers. No more than 6 times. Now it's 6,000 times, 600,000 times. There are CEOs that make $120 million a year, for example. And the guys that made the billions in 2008, the CEOs that recommended all this fluctuation in the domiciliary bubble over and over again. If we don't destitute and we don't separate, like church and state, the rich people from government, the experiment of Thatcher and Reagan already demonstrated us that failed. COP16 has proven that. If you see why it is important to understand that money is not going to buy us the oxygen and the water that we need. Whomever lives in this planet is going to die sooner or later, regardless of the money it has, the bunkers have built, etc. So, where a Colombian president, president of the South America, fighting terrorism since 1492, have explained to these countries that came together, this is of world importance, is sustainability for the planet, no less, this COP16 meeting. And Colombia was big-time leader on this one. And knowing that Colombia, of course, broke political relationships with Israel after the genocide of October 7, that's it. And how that has affected Colombia, because Colombia is not exporting. Colombia is the 6th biggest producer of coal in the world. That country decided not to sell more energy to Israel, something that many other countries like double-minded president of Turkey is doing, criticizing Israel all the time. You must stop at letting pass the oil for Israel through his land. Well, you're not supposed to do that. Many other countries criticize Israel, but behind doors, they're letting pass not only oleoducts, but supporting Israel in other ways, like selling weapons, which is the case of Spain and many other countries that support Israel in many other ways. And Colombia president said, no, sorry, but no. I'm not sorry to say, Prime Minister Netanyahu, we broke relations. We have lived that in Colombia. Whomever is from Colombia that is over 50 or 40 years old will know a little bit about it. Or too much, or much, because we suffer a genocide in that country, and we keep on happening. And they want him dead. The president of Colombia has more enemies than Netanyahu right now. And not exactly the same, but the opposite. The ones that hit the same and opposite, because the far right in the country of Colombia, they want President Petro dead because he's making people strive. And the country is being used as an example all around the world as the economy grew even more than Canada's and European countries in the last year. Their GDP is 2%, Canadians is less, 1.3%, and the European unions are -1 or -2 or 0.1 or something like that. Why is that? Because they blew up Nord Stream 2. What a wise movement by the Americans. Yeah, remember I did a program who blew the Nord Stream 2 a couple years ago. Okay, that was the first movement. Now they're buying liquefied gas from the United States 4 times the price. 4 times the price. And as long as we have America and the European Union leaders, not their peoples, but their leaders, and the people that support that, of course, which is war no matter what, we have to keep colonization as a plan forever and ever and ever, we'll never let the world evolve. We'll never have distribution of wealth for anybody, and we'll always have poverty. And that will only demonstrate how developing these policies, these politicians are, and how for them, to them, greed, money, power that money can bribe, heal, or destroy is what it's all about. Human is all about, and that's the way of Israel. That's the way of Zionism, and that is the way of every country that and person that believes that are for themselves, i.e., the politicians. So we are not being represented, we are not being supported, and these bills here in Canada need to be confronted and deal with as soon as possible. Vote for me, and I will make sure that Canada leads the world in a better way than we are being led now. And not only that, that will mean that Europeans will claim back their identities as Europeans and will live together. And the only way to do that is to control immigration, but stop exploiting these people there in Africa and South, Global South. By helping their development, they will help themselves and avoid immigration, excessive immigration. But what you're doing now, European Union leaders, with van der Leyen and all that circuit that supports her, the same in the United States with your 500 Congresses that voted just for the keep going sending money for Israel, are nothing but traitors to their countries. And after a Nuremberg trial that the International Court of Justice just has begun, and a year ago, and the International Criminal Court has decided about, is just a first step that is not going to take us 1,000 miles. It's going to take us way shorter than that because we have no time. The clock is around and it's going faster than we think. And the race against the extermination of the world is fast, faster than before. I would say that we are 15 seconds away from the hecatomb that the United States and of Israel and Israel with the European Union corrupted governments, because they do not represent us, the peoples, are going to take us in. Vote for me here in Canada, guys. FDRC Molano Elections 2025 at gmail.com, and I will make change things. We will have good relationships with the United States. We will have good relationship with Europe, as long as they are part of an initiative that is to avoid war and to support our economies in order for all of us to grow together. And not only that, scientifically, aerospatially, and of course make a definition and an effort to understand that other civilizations are around us, and that we need to contact them in a positive way. We need to talk about the housing pricing in Canada and how to control inflation. And because if it will be necessary to control inflation by decree, we will do it. But no company and no lobbyist is going to have so much influence in our government as to dictate what policies will happen in the case of another pandemic or in the case of whatever other crisis, especially if it comes to protests. In the case of from Vancouver to Ottawa, one of my programs that speaks about how the revolution has come home when Canada's citizens decided to go from Vancouver to Ottawa in the protests 4 years ago. For us, for the country, for the world, if you want a better world, vote for me, vote for Canada first. Okay, but another thing, we have to remember how the mayor of Amsterdam accused his own citizens, her own citizens, her own, I correct here, it's a woman, of what happened on the game between Israel and Holland teams. And she has to, after the abominations, she said, against her own people. And that's what Canada is doing, and that's what Germany is doing, and that's what all European countries in unison are saying. Attack the protests, attack everybody that is pro-Palestinian, attack the Jews, even if they're against the Jews, especially if they're against their own Jews, and the state of Israel, especially Zionism, 100%. Treat them bad, break them, send some thugs like they did in the United States with the protection of the police. Like I said, if there's no generals, if there's no police, the world is fucked up. It belongs to the super powerful, because our generals and admirals are cowards that sold their souls to the highest bidder and are not for the Constitution but for the president. And if the president says, no, I like the money that I make, so the generals are okay, and the admirals are okay, and the Air Force generals are okay, and everybody in security stations and institutions is okay because we are corrupt and we make money and we destroy people's life and we kill and destroy and we bomb everybody. You remember George Carlin on war?
It's been a little while. It's been a little while since I've been here, and a couple of things have happened in that time. I'd like to talk a little bit about the war in the Persian Gulf. Big doings in the Persian Gulf. You know my favorite part of that war? It's the first war we ever had that was on every channel plus cable. And the war got good ratings too, didn't it? Got good ratings. Well, we like war. We like war. We're a warlike people. We like war because we're good at it. And you know why we're good at it? Because we get a lot of practice. This country's only 200 years old, and already we've had 10 major wars. We average a major war every 20 years in this country, so we're good at it. And it's a good thing we are. We're not very good at anything else anymore. Huh? Can't build a decent car, can't make a TV set or a VCR worth the fuck. Got no steel industry left, can't educate our young people, can't get health care to our old people, but we can bomb the shit out of your country, all right? Huh? We can bomb the shit out of your country, all right? Especially if your country is full of brown people. Oh, we like that, don't we? That's our hobby. That's our new job in the world, bombing brown people. Iraq, Panama, Grenada, Libya, you got some brown people in your country, tell them to watch the fuck out, or we'll goddamn bomb them. Well, when's the last white people you can remember that we bombed? Can you remember can you remember any white people we've ever bombed? The Germans, those are the only ones, and that's only because they were trying to cut in on our action. They wanted to dominate the world. Bullshit, that's our fucking job. That's our fucking job.
And as long as we don't identify what is the problem, and the problem is brute capital and donors, that is not only the state of Israel, which is the biggest and most influenced, that has more power of interference around the world. They accuse Russia of interference, and the Israeli people and lobbyists have the power to control pensum in academy, shut off professors and students, and ruin people's lives and careers, and that is not interference. And in more than 23 states in the United States now, and that is not interference. So if the mayor of Amsterdam has stepped back and said, I'm sorry, I didn't know, and apologize to the people, she has to say and do way more than that if it's necessary to forbid these people into their country. Like some the Moldova islands did, they are not receiving Israel citizens. No way. And that's another part that we have to see, is that Russia is being pushed by the United States by using mercenaries, Canadian and all these people that shouldn't be welcome in the country, especially if they want to serve by Israel's army, because they're committing crimes against humanity. And according to international law and Canadian law, these people cannot be accepted or welcome in this country. But apparently whomever is Israeli, by some reason, has an accept pass, is a patente de corso, a corso patent, which is you can kill and destroy whomever you want, we will protect you. That is not possible. If the mayor of Amsterdam demonstrated how far she will go to protect these people by going against their own, I mean, that means if they want to commit a genocide in your country, and I mean Canada, the Netherlands, etc., they will do it. And not only that, remember that it was Israel and the United States who managed to go and bombed and interfere Netherlands, if necessary, for the decision that they made. Well, the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice have their branches in Holland. So even though there's other branches that has to relate with the Roman Statute and other ones, and even though the United States might not be signatory to the Roman Statute, neither may be Israel and some other countries, it is in international law, and it is in the United Nations Charter, for which the United States of Israel and Israel are part and signatories of, to support and to make binding this resolution. Apparently, there's only two countries that Mr. Netanyahu, for now, even though Canada said that will apply the law regarding of what the International Criminal Court has said, but another is if it will abide to it, because Canada has not done anything else but to support the war in Ukraine against the Ukrainians, and a lost generation there, another lost generation of Ukrainians, a lost generation of Russians too, on an unnecessary war that Mr. Poilievre calls unprovoked, the same as Mr. Justin Trudeau. So when you see these things happening, you have an idea where this country is going, and I don't want that kind of country for Canada. I want Canada to be free and to be independent and sovereign. And right now, Canada is totally possessed by special interests, capital more than capitalistic interests, as you saw in that document about monopolies, and that is the same with Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc. All these Jewish people. And if that doesn't tell you something about Seneca and all these people that warned us about the power of corruption in institutions, especially by profitable money. The Rothschilds, for example, is a big example of how a Jewish family became British and following the Deuteronomy become super rich and distributed all around Europe, and was to the point that the letter that was addressed in order to promise the possibility for Israel to become Israel according to der Judenstaat was possible after the Waldorf Declaration of 1917. We have spoke about that innumerable times. So if we don't identify the sources of the corruption, we will not be able to have democracy. And why I say that? Because Russia slams Europe with unexpected energy blow. Again, why will that happen? Because they blew Nord Stream 2. So all these wars are related because there's only one purpose, and it's the hegemony of the culture of colonialism, not only for this planet, but for any planet the Jewish have any presence in. And not only the Jews, whomever has, like Bill Gates. I don't know that Bill Gates is Jewish, but I'm pretty sure that his greed is very familiar with those of the greedy people everywhere. In Islam, there's greedy people. In India, there's greedy people. There's greed everywhere. The point is, there's no social justice and there's inequality. It doesn't matter how rich you are. You have to be able to say, hey, I'm rich enough. As long as the people live out of poverty, educated, we can create and develop civilizations that are worthy to contact other civilizations and to protect ours at all cost. But if we keep demonstrating the bulbing practices, we're going to be the worst television series in the galaxy, dude. Nobody's going to want to tune in because we are the worst example to follow for any civilization, if we want to call this one a civilization, when the powers that be, especially that call for democracy, rules-based order. And as you remember in my last program, what Machiavelli used to say, and it was that it's better feared than loved, because fear makes people obey. That's not a free civilization. That is a submission of civilization, and that is anachronic, and that is against evolution, and that is against God principles and any moral principle of development. And that's what we want to build in Canada, or I want to build in Canada with your vote. Many much things to talk about, guys. As you know, feel free to ask some questions, make some comments. Please subscribe, favor this channel. I'm the most censored YouTuber in Canada, believe it or not. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead. For us, for the country, for the world, hope to see you next time in the next edition of React Today as part of the World's Whale Project. Au revoir, bye-bye, hasta pronto. Still snowing.